Once again, thank you all for joining us. As always, this is Nuance. I am Mike Scala, joined by Jay Carter, also known as Timid. He is the chair of BLM Tokyo and the hip hop MC extraordinaire. What's going on, Jay?
Not much. Doing pretty good. Finally got some good news this past week with the TED Talk. We'll get into that in a minute.
Oh, yes. We definitely will. I want to catch up on that. But we also have a very special guest with us this week. We are joined by Kwasi Asare of 2050 Forums. What's going on, Kwasi?
How you guys doing?
Doing all right. We're doing all good. How are you doing?
Oh, great. Yeah, just a little down just because my team lost this weekend, but pretty good in general. We're going into February that has a lot of, I think, positive things happening all over the world, but got to keep our feet grounded a little bit just because we are facing some significant challenges as well right now.
Absolutely. And let's get into that. I mean, that's kind of what started the podcast off last year was the Super Bowl. That was one of our first episodes when we talked about the halftime show there.
I believe that was the very first discussion that we ever had on here because it was notable to us since it was hip hop being featured for the first time really in that prime slot at the halftime show. And it kind of kicked things off, no pun intended for us. And we've been at it every year.
Let's get into this. I mean, I had a double day. Yeah, absolutely. And there've been some interesting, halftime shows the last couple of years that is pretty much connected to, the interest that we have because, Jay-Z has been helming that for the past 4 years with that agreement that Roc Nation signed with the NFL. So I took a look of it. The last four, like we had 4 years ago, it was J-Lo and Shakira. Then it was The Weeknd. Then last year it was Dr. Dre and crew, and then this year it was Rihanna. So this has been past 4 years. It's been pretty much connected to like hip hop R&B. It's pretty significant.
Right. So last year, I think it was very striking to us that was the first time, as far as I know, that hip hop really in itself took center stage, and it wasn't R&B or other types of genres. It was really hip hop. Of course, you threw in the Mary J. Blige and had all the flavor in there, but hip hop was the focal point last year.
Right. And even Mary J. is hip hop has always been considered like part of the hip hop crew. She's
hip hop,
but she's like the queen of hip hop soul, or what they call it.
Sure.
So I think that's pretty, and I remember when Jay signed with NFL, he struck that deal with the NFL, and that was still people were kind of boycotting or coming off of what are we doing next as far as the boycott, the Kaepernick boycott of the NFL. And Jay signed the deal and he got a lot of flack for it because it was like, what are you doing? Like, we're supposed to be, we're not supposed to be working with them. And Jay was like, we're trying to do some actions. What are we going to do next? This and that. And so the people I just listed, like that many in that order from this genre and this culture, that wouldn't have happened without Hove. I mean, I think he was, playing chess in that regard.
No, I think Jay-Z has always been extremely savvy and has played every angle his entire career to advance his career and to aggregate amazing resources and talent. And working with the NFL was one of his savviest moves for sure. At a moment when they really needed help in the urban community to kind of ground themselves, who better than a partner with the world's greatest MC? It was genius, I think, on his end. And you saw how he kind of worked with the Brooklyn Nets, created value for that franchise, made his exit, at the right time, and transitioned to the NFL opportunity. It was brilliant.
Now, speaking of Jay-Z, I do remember a story when he became president of Def Jam. he brought Neo in. I think he had said that he had received a demo previously or had heard of Neo, but it was kind of just like sitting on his desk or kind of in the back of his mind. But then when he got in that position, he was looking for new artists and he thought, whatever happened to that guy Neo, maybe I can bring him on. Did something like that happen with Rihanna? But if I recall correctly, he was responsible for putting her on too.
Well, I mean, she's been signed to Rock Nation, I believe, since the beginning of her career, since the very first single. And so I think he's been pretty involved in her career pretty much from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And he even called it out in one of, I forget what verse, one of his verses, and he's talking about as far as billionaires in hip hop or in the culture, and he said it's, you know, I did this, you know, it's me, Ye, and Riri's a billionaire now. So like it's like, you know, I've got the success. I'm showing you that we can do this type of thing. So yeah, it's really instrumental.
According to what I'm seeing here, Jay-Z signed Rihanna to her first record deal in 2006.
Yeah. So wow, wait, 2006? She's been around that long?
Sure. I remember that since the MySpace days, since she first came out.
Remember seeing her grow up in front of our eyes.
It's crazy. I can't. 2006.
Yeah.
Remember she was on Punk'd too. I guess that's how far back she goes. Now, what did you think about the halftime show? Come on, let's get it.
You know, I thought it was good. You know, it's hard to go from, you know, Snoop Dogg, Kendrick Lamar, 50 Cent, and Dre to anything else after that, right? It's kind of like no matter what they did, it was the energy level just was not going to be able to, you know, match that. But I think they went a little bit of a different direction with the female energy. Rihanna hasn't really been around in the public eye for the last couple of years. With the pregnancy, it was like this whole crazy reveal as well. So I thought they hit their mark. I think all the reviews have been glowing. Everyone really loved what they saw. You know, I wasn't really watching the game for the halftime show, so I thought it was fine, honestly.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Because you have a performance that on its own looks and sounds good. It's got good visuals, good sound, good backup dancing, good presentation, good light show, good everything. And I feel like sometimes people just want more. Maybe the bar was raised last year. I don't know, but it seems like a good to great performance isn't good enough for some people because they're expecting magic. They're expecting a million guest appearances and crazy things happening. But I mean, it was a good set at halftime, right? I mean, what more do you really?
Yeah, no, I definitely expected Jay-Z to come out at some point, which, you know, I think it was good that he didn't actually just let her own that, you know, mind share and the space and just let her fill it the way that she did. I thought was beautiful. And the contrast, this very masculine football with, you know, Rihanna's light was beautiful.
And that's what I'm hearing a lot of people they were just expecting Jay to come out. And I've heard it over and over. I even listened to like the Breakfast Club when they were talking about it, and like over half of the callers were calling in like, "Oh, we expected Hov to show up." And
that's interesting to me that they expected Jay-Z in particular, because my thinking was, okay, and I'm a bit biased because I'm more of a hip hop guy than an R&B guy. So I know Rihanna mostly from hip hop songs, like her hooks, and she even did some of her hooks on the set. So I was expecting not necessarily Jay-Z, maybe T.I. can come out for Live Your Life or one of the hooks. I mean, she wasn't going to bring out Kanye probably, but she sang All of the Lights. Like I'm thinking a rapper that she's worked with, maybe even Eminem on The Monster or something. Who knows? You know, but not necessarily just Jay-Z, but he was one of the three I think you would expect if she was going to bring out a rapper.
Yeah, I mean, because
he was probably in the building, right?
Oh, yeah, you know, he had to be in the building, but they've done several together, and like she's basically like she's his artist, so to speak. So I can understand why people would expect Jay to come out. I can also understand why Jay wouldn't come out. One, because like you said, she's going to own the space. Let her stand. This is also her first performance in public in like 7 years. So like, boom, like it's Rihanna. Let's do this. But also, since he is the producer of the show, some people might have some kind of feelings about that. Oh, you're gonna produce the show and put yourself on the biggest stage, So I can see
no, I
that you
think
get
you're
it.
right.
Do you think because of what happened last year, people were expecting that more than they would ordinarily? Or is it always going to be a thing now where when there's a performer announced for the halftime show, we're always going to want special guests?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a funny thing because you kind of, as a fan, you do have this little anticipation for the secret surprises, and you see that at Coachella, you see it different festivals. I mean, that's something hip hop has always kind of delivered, is that secret X factor. Um, I remember one time I went to see Talib Kweli. This is a long time ago, but by the end of the show, Mos Def had come out, High Tech had come out, and a Dave Chappelle, who was playing Little John at the time, had come out. And so, you kind of expect that kind of stuff in hip hop, especially at the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they didn't do it, because they wanted to like allow Rihanna to just own the night. And I can't tell you how many posts I saw that, Rihanna was the MVP of the Super Bowl, this and that. People loved it. So they hit their mark. They didn't need Jay-Z to come off the bench. She owned it, and she reestablished herself as, basically Beyonce's biggest rival, right? I mean, it's kind of like a diva two divas at the top there, I think.
That's a good point about hip hop being known for that. You have albums with all these guest appearances. People want to know who's on your album, and you do a show, you bring out all your peers. And yeah, I mean, I saw a Stretch and Bobbito show, and Pain in the Ass came out, did his skit, his OK and Reloaded skit, right? It's like you bring on everyone. That's kind of in the hip hop tradition. So I do see that. I probably would have liked it more myself, but that's just me. I understand the point of doing something unexpected. If people wanted to see the guest, or not even necessarily wanted, but were thinking that what was going to happen, if you could hold it down yourself, that's making a statement too.
I mean, yeah, and I get that, but this is not what we saw last year. Wasn't, as far as bringing people out, wasn't such an anomaly. Like, I mean, you think other Super Bowl halftime shows, there were always guests. People always brought surprise people up on stage. This was probably more the anomaly, where it was just one single performer. Nobody else came up on stage. I think that was more the case in this time. Now, to me, it was a little.
The weekend set was kind of similar to that, I suppose.
Oh, was it?
It was just him. I don't think he brought anybody out.
Okay. I thought it was a little flat this time around. I mean, she doesn't have a lot of good performance energy. And actually, Charlemagne the God kind of called it. Like, she performed like she was Jay-Z. She kind of performed like a rapper, because, with an R&B singer, you expect that they're going to be doing like all this crazy choreography, and they're going to be doing all this costume changes and this and that. And she just came out and just spit her bars, and like that was it.
Let me ask you this:
she is pregnant.
Yeah, and I haven't seen her.
I've never seen her perform.
I haven't seen her perform much. So I don't know, when she's not pregnant, does she do a lot of dancing and moving, or does she usually kind of spit her bars?
Yeah, that's my question.
I haven't seen her perform in so long. I don't even know.
Yeah. And that was confusing to me too, when they kept saying that she's back. She makes a return. In my mind, I'm like, oh, was she at the halftime show before she's making her return to the halftime show? But no, like you said, she just was out of music for many years.
Yeah.
I mean, I think because she's maintained her relevance with Fenty and all of her brand extensions, it doesn't seem like she went anywhere. But really, she hasn't produced. I think her first record that's come out was just earlier this year. And so, just in the last few months. And so, I think they use that as a marketing hook. Obviously, like Rihanna's back, like whatever. But I get it. Technically, she hasn't been on the stage similar to how she was. And I think a lot of performers are actually going through that same thing, with the pandemic having kind of put a kibosh on live shows. Yeah. You're seeing people like Bruce Springsteen and others come back and be like, oh shit, well, we were going to do our, final tour in 2020, but I guess we're going to do it now. Right. And a lot of artists are coming back to the stage. They have to rebuild those performance muscles. And so, yeah, she is back on stage for the
And
first time in years.
I think we want to give it. You know, you did mention like, oh, she's like established or reestablished herself as like Beyonce's main competitor, and just kind of. And I was very surprised to hear this, but actually, like Rihanna's sold like 150 million records more than Beyonce. She's accolades wise, she's surpassed Beyonce, and I was very surprised to hear that. I didn't realize she was that level and that big. As far as her music, because I was not the follower of Rihanna. So
Yeah, and Beyonce took a bit of a break too when she started the family and everything. I mean, she was gone for a while. Thank you to everyone for tuning in the chat. Jeremy says we needed more artists. James says I liked the halftime show. It was interesting. I didn't realize the platforms were real at first. I thought it was a video, and then she'd appear on the stage.
Yeah. So it was very, very, I thought it still was a good look, regardless. I thought it was a good look. We could have.
I want to see more rappers at the Super Bowl in general, whether they're guests or whether they have their own show. I mean, let's even ask that. Who do we think is the next rapper to be featured at the halftime show?
Oh, wow. I would have said Kanye, but obviously he's not going to be on there anytime soon. That is maybe Drake. I mean, although he's Canadian, so that's a little weird, but
I think
Drake,
Drake is probably the one who'd probably be positioned the best for a halftime show.
Do you think they would ever give it to Kendrick, given that he just won the best rap album? He's kind of getting those accolades too.
But he's done it already. He did it with
with Drake last year.
He appeared briefly, but I mean, as far as giving him like a headline performance, performing live at his show.
I don't think so. Not since he appeared recently on another stage. I don't think they would give it to him that soon.
So it seems to me that we might not be getting any rappers before we get more singers.
I think we're probably going to get a singer because we've had a lot of hip hop adjacent culture the last 4 years. I think they're going to switch it up next time. And
it would be good energy, even EDM. Like, let's see, I don't know, Polkenfold or not Polkenfold, but like Calvin Harris, right? Or something like that. That might be interesting.
We'll see. Hopefully.
What about a mix too? That would be interesting if you have different genres, some crossover.
Like when they had J-Lo and Shakira, that was kind of like a cool, like back and forth, kind of situation. And of course, the legendary JT and Janet, it'd be interesting to see, maybe they'll go super young, like a Billie Eilish, right? Like just completely change it up,
What about a versus type situation with different rappers going back to back with their hits?
Or Bad Bunny.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
Bad Bunny is a great choice. Yeah, I mean, he's headlining Coachella. He's had a breakout year.
Yeah.
Harry Styles, right? With one album of the year last year.
Yeah.
I could also see them going like country, like Florida Georgia Line, Kid Rock. Just totally the opposite of hip hop, right? Just to really go after that other demographic.
Even though Kid Rock came up through hip hop.
Yeah, we don't want Kid Rock. We don't want no Kid Rock.
Well, it's interesting. I've booked the Democratic and Republican national conventions, like satellite events, at the DNC and RNC in 2012 and 2016, and it's really hard to book acts for the Republican convention. And pretty much every year, you got Blues Traveler, Kid Rock are like the two headliners, and then it just kind of falls off really heavy from there,
And nobody wants to be associated. So, it's funny.
I mean,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's. I was saying, no. I mean, unfortunately, that is the case. I guess they could get Kanye to do it next year, maybe.
I would not be surprised.
Wow.
Well, ironically, when the first Democratic National Convention I went to in 2008, I saw Kanye perform at the Recording Industry Association for American Party, and that was like literally the hottest ticket. It was insane to get. Since then, a lot has happened. So I don't
I
know.
remember that. He posted a selfie with Joe Biden at that time.
Yeah, I mean, he was all about that at that moment. I don't know exactly what happened between 2016 and 2020 or whatever. But if they could figure out a deal, that would be a coup. If they could get Kanye to play the RNC, I mean, that would be crazy.
I would not be surprised if that happens. Now that you mention that, I would not be surprised.
You're speaking the idea into existence.
Yeah, I can see that really happening.
Jay, I wanted to ask because I think you've seen some stuff online. I saw a few things about that moment. Was the sniff? What was that all about?
Oh, well, there was controversy with Rihanna's performance. And actually it was you who brought it to my attention. And I went back and checked it because I didn't notice it. But apparently in the middle of her performance, she reached down and she kind of scratched her crotch. And then she brought it up and she sniffed her fingers. And so you kind of, a lot of people are upset about that. Talking
The whole
about
thing is kind of confusing to me. I saw some people talking about it, and then I think I sent it to you. I was like, "What is this?" And I think you saw some more stuff. I guess I'm kind of lost as to why someone would do it. I guess, but also why is it a big deal? Like, what? Why? Like, who cares? Like, why is it such a big thing that people are trying to make of it?
she scratched her vag and then she sniffed the fumes. Like, I mean, I can understand why some people are like, that's a little disgusting, yo.
I mean, on international TV is probably not the move you want to make, but
yeah, and she did it purposely because I went back and watched it and thinking, okay, maybe they're just reading into it. Maybe it was just a move like Michael Jackson, and then she just brought up her finger or something. But no, like it looked like she purposely sniffed it because then she like kind of winked at the camera and smiled. Like, yeah.
No, it definitely looked choreographed, which is why it was kind of confusing to me. Like, why would you put that into your set? Like, it's just weird, and I don't know why it would spark that much outrage either. I can see people think, oh, that's kind of gross, but people were really mad about it.
I think the really mad is more the conservative side that they're gonna get mad anyway. But it was just kind of like, really, did you need to do that? So
I could definitely see how it could be a little bit off-putting. I guess it's sexy.
It's sexy. Okay.
Some people might. I mean, I can see people like, yeah, I would do that. I'd sniff her fingers, but so. I mean, look, we're talking about pop stars, right? They do shocking things on stage. Like, this is not the first time someone's done something shocking. Certainly not the first time someone's grabbed a crotch. I mean, that was Michael Jackson's whole career. So
let me put it like this then. Do you think that was done intentionally for the purpose of creating controversy as her provocative moment? This is my Janet moment.
She's bad girl Riri, so maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. It was a pretty safe and everyone was wearing a lot of clothes, right? It was a very safe, kind of family-friendly performance, and so for her to put that little accent in there, like a little nod to her bad girl persona, I think makes sense.
I dig that as a concept. I don't know if that's the way to do it or whatever, did what she did, but I get where you're coming from with that, right? Like, okay, this is maybe too sanitized even. I'm at the Super Bowl. People are saying that, why are we even messing with them? And, it's kind of like a keep it real kind of moment. Let me be a little edgy, kind of maintain that side of me,
Agreed.
I can see it.
And that could be part of, like, I don't watch her performances. So, I mean, that could be something that, she kind of does on her performances anyway.
Her signature move.
Yeah, that could be it. I mean, what Fenty's got like perfumes and stuff. Maybe she's selling the Fenty off of herself.
I mean, she started the performance putting her makeup on very intentionally, and so I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of it as well.
Right. Yeah. So
Jeremy in the chat says, "Did Prince sniff his fingers?"
Hey, listen, Prince sniffed a whole lot of stuff. All right, like let's be clear. Like, they were out there too. I mean, remember Prince coming out on stage and like the assless chaps and like just butt cheeks on the stage. Like, I think people just kind of were in that moment where everything is something that triggers someone and they forget about moments that they used to love. And so
I think people are very sensitive at this moment to you could piss people off for so many reasons
Yeah.
now. It's really hard to like do anything that someone's not going to be like, well, I don't like that for this reason. It's you can't please everybody. So I think in that case, as an artist, she took her liberty. That was her how she felt and her expression. So let her have that. It's up to her, really.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, Jay, that you say you believe it's mostly conservatives who are mad, and you might be right about that. But thinking of how the culture is now, you usually see conservatives saying people should be able to say whatever they want. Whatever happened to freedom of speech? I can do this. Artists can do whatever they want. People can say whatever they want. It's usually people on the far left who are trying to censor people and say you can't go to colleges and things like that. So, what's up with that? Is that just because she's black? I mean, is that a racial thing? What is that?
I think we're just in that weird space, that, I wouldn't go right to the because she's black thing. I think it's just a weird space. Like you said, conservatives are usually ones saying, oh, you shouldn't do this. And then liberals might have this type of thing. But at the same time, conservatives are also sons that say don't do this. And so it's like people just get outraged just to get outraged, it seems. And there was another thing that briefly that commercial, one of the commercials. So everyone looks forward to the Super Bowl commercials. And there was an organization that put out the He Is Us, He Gets Us campaign on the Super Bowl. And this was, they did a voiceover of a commercial with black and white pictures of, demonstrations and some struggle things and hot button things that are going on in the news. And they're giving this, this narration of like, oh, there was a man who was also crucified for his beliefs and talk this and that. And at the very end, it's like, it's Jesus. And they're like, well, he gets us, he understands. And they have other commercials talking about Jesus was a refugee too, and all this and that. But what's crazy is like both sides are upset at this commercial. So the Democrats, well, let me say the liberal side, some were questioning the commercial because they're like, you spent $20 million on this to try to make this message. You could have used that $20 million to actually do some work with it.
Get people off the street,
right? And then conservatives are upset with like the messaging on there. Oh, this is just some liberal propaganda. Like we're supposed to love everybody, or whatever that kind of stuff is. And it's really weird because the people behind the commercials, it's even weirder there because you go to the website, you look at the commercial, and it seems like it's this inclusive, like everyone come together type of thing. This just would spread this message that Jesus would have wanted to spread and all this and that. But apparently behind the scenes, like the donors are like ultra conservatives. The guy that owns Hobby Lobby is one of the main donors to it. So people are upset about their ties to like some of these extreme right positions. It's just like,
you see,
a mess.
It's weird. I wouldn't be surprised if some people behind something like that were foreign actors just trying to sow division in the U.S.
Well, we've certainly seen that over the years, and no bigger place to drop a stink bomb on America's culture than at the Super Bowl, if that was your intention. I don't know that was the intention of that commercial in particular. Maybe they're just trying to reestablish Jesus as a relevant part of our society, but it certainly could be perceived in many different ways.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. Like you angered both sides. Like at least they came together on something, right?
So what I also found interesting was looking at the cost of the commercial on Super Bowl and how every year it goes up, right? This year, reportedly, it cost $7 million for a 30-second commercial.
Just to air one. Wow.
That's insane.
But if you go back, let's see, if you go back last year, okay, it was about 6.5 million. The year before, 5.6 million.
But due to like, I mean, the return on that, it's got to be crazy. If you're paying 7 million, like the return in many cases, it's got to be much better than that. Because a lot of people come back every year. Budweiser is like religiously putting out Super Bowl commercials, so they got to be getting returns on that.
General Motors is another one that had a huge campaign this year. They didn't even have the cars for sale yet that they're selling. There's an EV campaign. As a matter of fact, their campaign drove Google searches for Tesla because people associate EVs, even though the commercial was for GM, the EV is what people took away, and they went and tried to search for Tesla instead. So I don't know. The ROI on those commercials is a little shaky sometimes, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be hard to measure, I would think. I mean, a company like Budweiser maybe is just expected to do it now, but they've got so much money to play with. And maybe they're just trying to stay relevant in pop culture. Maybe they think that'll help them throughout the year and kind of like a long-term play. I don't know if it's very easy to measure how much money they brought in directly as a result of that commercial that one day.
Right. And I mean, like you said, and they're kind of expected to put a commercial. Budweiser in particular, like they're kind of expected to put out a commercial for the Super Bowl. And usually they have some of the best ones. So
I don't remember their commercials this year at all. Maybe I missed them.
Overall, I wasn't too impressed with the commercials this year.
Yeah. They were pretty flat, I felt like. There wasn't like that breakout, like, oh shit. The one that people are talking about the most is the Tubi one.
Tubi.
But only because it looked like they were changing your channel, not because it was anything like super cool or anything, you know?
I think it was pretty much it's a genius move because it got people talking, right? Immediately social media went out like, oh yeah, I bet everybody had Tubi had everyone talking about where's the remote, right? And so like that's the buzz that you're looking for. You want that chatter to keep going on. Like who really has heard or knows much about Tubi, but now everyone's talking about it.
Exactly.
So I think
they probably, from a mind share perspective, they probably won,
I wouldn't doubt that. Yeah.
So that's a good segue into Kwasi and what you've been up to. I know you worked on social media for Bad Boy Records, right? You've done a lot. So why don't you talk about your background, your history, and what you're working on now?
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess long story short, my family is from Ghana. I'm a big Eagles fan. I grew up in Philadelphia. I went to Penn. And so it was a pretty big night, I think, for many of us who are Philadelphia Eagles fans, with Jalen Hurts emerging as a leader and as not just a leader on the field, but a leader in our society over the last year. It's been amazing to see him grow up in front of our eyes, and for him to lead the team to the Super Bowl, I think was just an amazing thing for all of us. I went to University of Pennsylvania. After that, I actually did institutional investment banking. I was on Wall Street on 9/11, and we can talk about that in another podcast. But let's just say I walked home 45 blocks that day to my apartment. And after spending another 2 years on Wall Street, I actually moved out to California the second year of my program. I kind of got a little bit disillusioned with Wall Street. I didn't think that for me at that time it was the right path to be on. And I decided to move to Los Angeles and immerse myself in digital media and journalism. I started my career doing this, interviewing people, right? And using the press pass to get backstage, to build relationships with people. That led to interviewing people like John Legend and actually Kanye. I did one of his first magazine covers. Eventually, I was able to kind of wrap my head a little bit around the emerging social media ecosystem. And this was 2003. So MySpace was huge. Other platforms were just kind of getting off the ground, like Facebook. We had Napster that was really changing things up. And so I had this idea that if I could immerse myself in digital media, could become an expert, then I could offer value to the record labels and to the media industry that maybe no one else could. And my theory was right, because one day, ironically, I was taking the GMAT to try to go to graduate school. I was going to go to USC because they have this MBA for media. And when I got out of the test, I had a job offer on my message from Sony Music. They had asked me to join their digital media team, which at the time it was just marketing. And when I got there, they only had websites. There was no social media at the time. As crazy as that sounds, they did not even have They didn't have MySpace pages. They didn't have Facebook. They had none of that. They also did not have any relationships with bloggers like 1212, like Jay. My job was to start to develop those relationships. And Jay, I don't remember even when the first time we met was, but at Sony, in addition to building out their social media presence, my job was to reach out to Perez Hilton, reach out to Chuck Creekmore, reach out to Nicole Beachy and all these emerging blogs at the time, and really build those bridges between Sony and those blogs. I then went to Cornerstone after that, Cornerstone Promotion. You guys might know the Fader magazine, Fader Port.
That's when we met.
Yeah, Rob Stone and John Cohen, amazing visionaries in the space. And I got really lucky. I was there the summer of 2006, and I got to run some amazing campaigns for Princess 3121, Snoop Dogg's Blue Carpet Treatment, Ice Cube's Laugh Now, Cry Later, Gnarls Barkley's Saying Elsewhere, Pharrell's In My Mind, Philip Quiley Eardrum, Outkast Idlewild, Gnarls Barkley Saying Elsewhere, I mentioned that one, and then P. Diddy's Press Play album. And when I was working on that campaign, within a week or two, I got the call from Puff and from Atlantic at the time, and they were like, "Hey, we want to hire our first digital media executive at Bad Boy," and I was the guy for that job. And I'll never forget. I was sitting on when I got the opportunity to interview. I had to interview with Puffy himself. And it was at that time, this job was working hand in hand with Puffy as the digital media director, because I was basically managing his entire digital presence across all of his brands, across everything. And so it was very important to him that he actually had a relationship with whoever that person was going to be. And I remember sitting on the couch during the interview in his penthouse in Park Avenue North or whatever. And he said to me, "Why are you the person for this job?" And I thought to myself, I took a second and I said, because I've always wanted to build an online empire like you've built an offline empire. And at that moment, it was like a light went off, and, next thing I know, I'm getting, I get the opportunity to work there full time. And for 3 years, I ran all the digital marketing across all of Bad Boy's brands. Ciroc Vodka was a new project that we launched together. Notorious Movie, Biggie's Greatest Hits, Danny Kane, Young Jock, Making the Band. In 2008, I ran Puffy's campaign as a surrogate with Barack Obama, where Puffy, Jay-Z, and Mary J. Blige all became part of the Obama campaign. And we created a destination site called Team Obama, where we uploaded all these endorsements of Mr. Obama. And Jay-Z, Mary J. Blige, and Puffy actually went on the road physically with Barack Obama the weekend of the election in 2008 and went on tour with him from Miami to Maine and stopped every city along the way, and obviously helped Barack Obama win that first election. So it was really special to be a part of that. And I got to go to my first Democratic National Convention that year. Fast forward to 2010, I leave Bad Boy, and it was, I left because I basically had a vision to build my own company, build my own empire. And over the last 12 years or so, I've equity in about 15 different companies as an investor, as a founder, and I run the Feedia agency, which is a full service business development and marketing agency as well.
Yeah. Now, I think we've met either at your time with Cornerstone or when you got to Bad Boy. You mentioned the Ice Cube project, and I do remember, I don't know, maybe it was you, but it was definitely Cornerstone, I think. Well, maybe it was Cornerstone, because I went to the release that when Ice Cube came to New York for that album. And so it was either, maybe it was through you, or it was through when you were at Cornerstone, or it was just Cornerstone, because I had relationships with Cornerstone at the time as well.
Remember that Jay Nichols as well, who ran the radio group.
Yeah.
Jay, I actually remember that event. I wasn't there, but you were telling me about it when Ice Cube was releasing his new album. And I think somebody asked him, why is he releasing a new album now, given he doesn't need to? He's successful in movies and everything else he's doing. Why is he going back to rap? And his answer was, because I'm a B-boy.
Yeah, yeah. He was mad cool. I actually chopped it up briefly with him at that point. And just like you said, you went out and you did interviews and network and stuff. And that's actually a lot. Mike and I did similar stuff. We through the website, the 1212, but also through previous websites, we would go and interview some artists and go to these networking events and do the same type of thing. So it's good. It's
I mean,
good.
it's the way to get into the industry, right? You get that press pass, you
Yeah.
know, almost any celebrity will talk to you, right? Because you're a journalist. They either don't want to piss you off or they want some shine. And
Right, right.
so it
Right.
was the easiest
Right.
way to really expedite the relationship building process.
Yes, yes. You
Yeah,
said it
for
right
sure.
there. That is the hustle. And some people don't necessarily pick up on that, but that's the game right there. You're not going to people asking for them to help you. In a way, you're offering them something. They have to get
Oh,
something,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
And so now you have value to them. It's not like, hey, will you please listen to my demo? Will you please give me a call back? I need your help. No, you're offering something to them. Now they want you. So they seek you out.
Exactly. Like I got introduced to people like High Tech and Snoop Dogg and Taboo from Black Eyed Peas and all these people, not because I was such a great guy, or because I was a journalist, and because the person introducing me knew that it was going to help them, right? To get, Snoop Dogg in whatever, or getting John Legend in these publications. And so the press pass, people don't really think about it as much as I think that they should. I know it's difficult. People don't get paid as writers, but it's an investment you can make in your own career that I've seen myself, the ROI it can return, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. And we used some of those skills and relationships in your first campaign, Mike, when we were reaching out to some of these established networks and connections that we had made over the years to get more press and whatnot. So, see, Lix has joined us in the chat. So I want to now let's fast forward to the present day. You have, like you said, you're in the mix of all kinds of stuff. Like you said, you're on boards. You got Feedia. You're on Fast Company board, and you've just launched. I think it was Sundance recently.
Yeah. So
forums. What's the 2050?
2050 forums. So in 2019, I actually launched this project initially, and we launched it at Sundance in 2019. And then we did one at Coachella and South by. And the really simple idea is that in 2050, I'll be 70 years old. The United Nations and many climate experts believe that if we do not reduce our carbon emissions to net zero by 2050, then the temperature of the Earth will rise at an uncomfortable rate, and essentially we will maybe boil the Earth, right? And like we won't be able to sustain things like coral reef, and it'll set off a series of even more catastrophic and kind of dramatic weather events. I mean, we've seen earthquakes the last couple of years. We've seen increase in earthquakes, in drought conditions, in flooding. Ironically, right? And if we do not change the course of our society globally, and that I'm talking about capitalism, I'm talking about producing vehicles and things that actually release additional carbon into the atmosphere, if we don't get more serious about how we're changing that course, then we're not going to have to worry about 2050 because we won't even be here, right? We'll be like, we'll be on a course that none of us want to be on. And so the 2050 forums, which we just relaunched at Sundance post-pandemic, we brought in subject matter experts from all over the world to talk about humanity's greatest challenges, starting with climate. But we also, brought in subject matter experts on things like gender-based violence and discrimination through our partners at the African Renaissance Diaspora. We had experts on period poverty, Christine Gardenning, the founder of Could You. We had experts talking about anti-Semitism and hate speech, Sammy Steigman, who is literally a Holocaust survivor who was experimented on by the Nazis, and to this day still deals with the pain that's a result of being in a prison camp when he was a young child. The reality is, though, even Sammy Steigman will tell you the things that are happening today in places like Tigray and even in Ukraine and some of these other places, we might as well be in World War II because it's the same thing. We have not learned from our mistakes. We keep repeating the same cycle over and over again. It doesn't matter if it's in Syria or Iran or in Tigray. We see humans treating other humans like dogs or worse, and it's not acceptable. And I think it's up to all of us, including the three of us right here on this podcast, to change how we're going to treat each other going forward. Because if not us, then who?
Absolutely. Now you did the forums, and it was like, if I remember the schedule, it was over 2 or 3 days. You had events planned.
Yeah. So we initially thought about a 3-day, 3 hours a day, and an after party a day thing was the plan. What ended up happening was 4 days and about 12 events, because when people started to understand what we were doing and what our goals were, and they saw the spaces we had and the kind of energy that we were pulling together, other sponsors came on board and wanted to produce events with us as well. So it actually ended up being, I mean, almost a 24-hour, 4-day thing, because we were starting each day at like noon. We had our conversations during the daytime. We would have like a dinner or an evening thing. And then at like 12, we had 2 different after party venues that were going till maybe, 3 or 4 in the morning. And so it was pretty intense over the course of the 4 days. Yeah.
Now you're taking this on the road too. It's not just at Sundance. Aren't you also going to do this at South by Southwest?
Yeah, I didn't know it was going to happen, when I decided to pull the trigger. And keep in mind, from when I decided to actually do the event to when our first event was about a 40-day runway that included Christmas and New Year's, right? Because I started basically December 10th. Our first event was January 20th. So in that 40-day period, we raised tens of thousands of dollars. People flew in from all over the country, all over the world, really. And we were able to aggregate almost 1,000 thought leaders over the course of the 4-day period. I didn't know that was going to happen, right? I didn't know how it was all going to turn out. And what ended up happening afterwards in the last couple of weeks is that other festivals from all over the world have reached out to us. South by Southwest, our partners at Grit Daily have asked us to join and produce 2050 forums in Austin next month. At Coachella, one of our partners has asked us to come to Coachella and produce 2050 forums again at Coachella. Our partners from Sundance, Misfit, has asked us to come to Cannes, co-produce 2050 forums there. A few other festivals have reached out, the Pan-African Festival, the Da Vinci Film Festival, and actually COP28. We've been invited to COP28, which is a United Nations Global Climate Conference, which is going to be in the Middle East this year. And we've been asked by actually 2 different groups now we're talking to about bringing 2050 forums to COP28. And so the response has been phenomenal. We've already started thinking about Sundance 2024 as well. And so I could never have expected this. Even today, another opportunity came to us to work on America's 250-year anniversary, which is coming up in 2026. And so just so many things. I'm still trying to understand all the relationships and all the opportunities and really all the seeds that were planted. Because we talk about 1,000 people. These are 1,000 filmmakers, investors, influencers, some of the smartest, brightest, most talented people in the world that were all brought together around this simple idea of preserving humanity through 2050. And I don't know what that's going to turn out to be. There's probably 10 companies that are going to be developed just from the people that met that weekend. Maybe there's going to be 5 marriages and all these things just because we decided to pull this thing together. So I'm excited for the future and the seeds that we planted for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is phenomenal. Just thinking of it from the perspective of, you're a guy, as you tell your story, you started out in media and really in music, and now you're working on all of these important things for humanity. And almost in the political realm, if not directly. It's certainly political issues that you're working on. And I kind of took a similar path in my life. So I'm inspired to hear your story, coming from music, getting involved in law and politics. I think it just shows people that you can have a very diverse background. You come from all walks of life, and you should. People from all walks of life need to be involved in these important conversations because it is our future and it's our children and our grandchildren. We don't know if we will even have a plan for them at this rate. And so everyone needs to be in on this. And I think it's dope to have people from backgrounds that you wouldn't expect. I mean, I don't think going back 5, 10, 15 years ago, you would necessarily expect people from music to be so involved in these spaces, well, from entertainment, but we need to be. Everyone needs to be. And I think we need to normalize that, where we shouldn't put people in boxes and say, you come from music, you come from entertainment, stay in your lane. You should only be able to do that for the rest of your life. No.
That is my least favorite, like, popular phrase. Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. How the fuck do you know what my lane is?
Exactly.
You know what
Exactly.
Like, I'm defining my own lane.
We're trying to read the road. Forget the lane.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly. It's like that at the end of Back to the Future, where we're going, we won't need roads. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right. Absolutely. No,
but I think you're 100% right about inclusiveness and coalition building. It's none of it can happen on its own. I mean, look at Barack Obama, who we mentioned earlier. His game plan of leveraging influencers and technology is why he became the president. He knew he needed a non-traditional campaign, and our society culture does drive so much of what becomes popular and relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought that's why one of the reasons I wanted to ask you to come on here is to talk about, what you're doing. I think the 2050 forums is a really dope idea. And it's great to see that it's going to be extended and it's going to be a conversation that continues going forward. So
who knows? Maybe it'll keep going all the way till 2050, and we can look back at 2050 at 2050 and be like, you know what? We did our job. We preserved as much as we could the planet for future generations. And if we get there, we don't feel that way, then I think it's our own fault, because we have an opportunity today to choose which path we're going down. And it's only our own greed or short-sightedness that will stop us from going down the righteous path.
Absolutely. And we've been faced with these types of things for so long. It's not a very new concept. We've been sounding the alarms for a long time. Famously, Al Gore, the inventor of the internet,
Sure.
he kind of sounded that in 2000s. Then you go back before that. People were talking about what was happening with the ozone layer. And then, even before that in the 70s, there was this big alarm that was being sounded like, look, this is what's coming. This is what we're doing. We have to take these steps. And there have been steps taken along the path. I mean, you go and watch old movies and stuff talking about like LA and New York, and the fog or the smog in LA used to be like, so thick you could chew it. Now they've got like clean air. So
even things like recycling, right, that happened in our lifetime. I mean, where it became the thing that everyone is supposed to do. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, people would throw trash on the street like it was nothing all the time. That was like normal, right? And then society shunned that at a certain point and said, hey, we got to start treating the environment better.
Right. And we can make these changes. It's not like it's something that's not doable. It's something that is very doable. We just have to put in the effort to do it.
I agree 100%. I mean, nothing that, sequestering carbon and, not driving as much, using less fossil fuels, transitioning to cleaner burning energy is something that we have the capability to do at the highest level. Do we have the will,
right,
the cultural push, and ultimately the political push to actually do that is the question. And that's what we need to inspire with the 2050 forum conversation.
Absolutely. There's a graphic that I found on the internet years ago that I love, and I actually keep it on my computer. And it's a talk between a little boy and Gaia. And Gaia is meant to be the goddess or the ruler of the world and nature. And the little boy is saying, Mother Gaia, I apologize for what humanity is doing to the earth, and we should help save the earth. And she looks at it and she's like, oh, my poor self-centered humans, you really think that what you're doing to the earth is damaging? We've survived. Nature has survived much worse than you. What you're actually doing is you're screwing up the environment for yourself, and you're not going to be able to survive in it. And when you're gone, you won't be missed. So
I think that's
really
a very good point.
That's
The
really
Earth is not gonna go anywhere. The question is, are we gonna be here or not?
right. Right. Yeah. I mean, because we've seen it, right? With when the pandemic hit and everyone went inside and there was less human involvement outside for like a good year and a half, nature started overtaking some places, right?
Birds were singing, dolphins started swimming around and stuff. I mean, it was nuts. It
Right.
just shows you how much we do have an effect on every part of our ecosystem, and we do have the ability to change things one way or the other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing. I look forward to seeing how everything progresses and whatnot.
Excellent. Well, I love working with you guys, and I appreciate your support. Jay, you've always been a big fan and supporter, and helped move along many projects over the years, and I've always been a fan of your work as well, and so excited to continue to build with you. And thank you for having me on this podcast. It's been amazing.
Absolutely. Wait, hold one way. We forgot you mentioned that about the music. Remember, we talked at one point. I don't remember what it was. We were supposed to be dropping your album. I was supposed to be writing the lyrics, and you were supposed to be spitting the bars. What happened?
Yeah, no, and I'll get Hank Shockey to produce it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and, I mean, yeah,
Public Enemy
it's funny.
2.0.
Well, it's funny. Ice Cube was just talking about how when he left NWA, the Bomb Squad is who produced his records, and they were like the baddest producers at the time on the East Coast. And over the years, I've been able to develop a relationship with Hank Shockey through going to CES and being a part of the Leaders Technology. He's an amazing guy, and if you saw him walking down the street, you would never know that he's, an elder, you know what I mean? Because he does not represent that way at all. And yeah, there is a part of me that wishes I could go back to being 22 and start spitting rhymes and whatever, but I'll probably end up more like Mike and run for some elected office at some point before I drop a rap record. So
Hey, don't be so sure. I got some more music I'm working on too. So I think that's a cool thing, man.
Doesn't have to be mutually exclusive.
There's no
these days everything's bashed
no
up.
staying in your lane, right? There's no staying in your lane. It's just widening the road.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So that's great.
Yeah, we'll circle back on that, Jay.
All right, for sure.
Before we wrap up, we wanted to talk about the alien invasions, what's going on with these flying objects, right, Jay? The UFOs,
right. Yeah, I think it's funny, but then because it's funny, but it's not funny. Like, it's been a week and there's been 4 unidentified objects that the U.S. military has had to shoot down. And it's funny because people are saying, "Oh, is it aliens? Is it this and that, or is it?" I think the first one they said was Chinese surveillance balloon or weather balloon. But that's not a coincidence. I don't think that's a coincidence. You don't get 4 in a week that have to be shot down that is a coincidence. What do you guys think? I think it's something that's needs to be paid attention to.
Yeah, well, a good friend of mine, Josh Rogan, he works for Washington Post and CNN, and he was interviewed about this the other day. And the reality is that there is a lot of surveillance happening that we'll never see because it's all based on satellites and whatever. The difference is that, this, what they call, I guess, middle space between the lower atmosphere and space, there's like this area that typically pilots are not, or planes are not able to fly in because it's too high, and satellites don't exist in because it's too low. That is where we may be vulnerable, and that's where these balloons are living. And so that should be alarming, because if we're not defending that airspace appropriately, we know bad things can happen. And the fact that there are 4 of these, objects that have been launched just in the last week at least shows that the pace at which, wherever they're coming from is increasing. So that in and of itself is a little alarming. It's like no matter if it's Chinese or Russian or wherever it's coming from, they're starting to test our defenses more, right? So that is a little concerning. But I would say that it's not off trend. If you look at U.S. China relations and U.S. Russia relations, I mean, there is a war happening, right? And at the same time, U.S. and China relations are not that great, right? And there's a lot of talk about 2025 and China, the moves China is making against Taiwan. And so I don't think it's not surprising to me that there is this kind of escalation happening. You talk about a Cold War, but a Cold War could get hot, right, at any moment. That's kind of like that's the thing there. So as much as I don't want to cause a panic or create fear, I would say that there is some reason to be a little bit concerned. Maybe not in your day to day, but certainly I would hope our national security folks and military folks are on high guard if they're not already, and we just hope for the best.
Yeah, I think it would seem with four in such a short amount of time that, like you might mention, that someone might be testing our resolve, our defenses, our reactions, which would be predicate, but be in preparation of something else. And I think in that regard, the two big factions of our political system, the Democrats and Republicans, need to get it together, because their dysfunction is on display for the rest of the world. And this is a way that if they're testing us, they need to know that these two are going to come together and make sure that, okay, look, we may fight within, but there is a line that you can't cross with all of us. So I think the two need to really come together in here and show that.
Somebody mentioned earlier about sowing seeds of conflict here in the United States via the internet or via whatever. These are real things. I mean, we know that Cambridge Analytica and some of these other things that were used by foreign actors to influence our political system, and it's reported on a weekly basis that it's an ongoing thing. It's not like it happened. It's like an ongoing thing, and I think foreign actors will probably get really savvy about how they are influencing our elections, how they are trying to sow division in our country. And ironically, these are the things that we did in other countries, right? It's like, I hate to say it, but Malcolm X, famously called out America for doing things that then people do to us, which is kind of what's happening right now in a way. If you look at the big picture and you see our enemies and how people in this country are reacting to each other, it's not very American, right? Like January 6th was like the least American thing, right? It's like, how do these things happen? It's because there are other people out there who don't have America's interests in mind, and they're trying to hurt us.
Absolutely. And so I think people need to keep these things in mind also, in the spirit of the 2050 forums, also to put in efforts to resolve some of these conflicts or some of these causes, and to get on board with some of these actions that need to take place, which we almost forgot, just to say, the TEDx talk that I did is finally up on the TEDx channel on YouTube. And that was one of the topic was getting involved in these things and how not to let fear and doubts and worries and concerns derail you from getting involved. Because there are a lot of things that need people's voices. They need their action. They need their time and their effort, like the 2050 forums, like the causes that's being supported there, and just the causes that bring unity through the country. So got to make sure we do that.
Yeah, so that was your good news, Jay. Why don't we put the link to your TEDx talk in the description?
Definitely. I will do that now.
Yeah, congrats on that, Jay.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, unless you have something else, Jay, I guess it's about time we wrap up. We'll go to the bottom line.
Go to the bottom line.
All right. Well, we like to give our guests the last words, whatever you want to say, anything on your mind. It could be what we talked about or beyond.
Yeah,
Whatever you want to leave the
I would
listeners
just
with, Kwasi Asare, what is the bottom line?
I would just say go Eagles. Life is long. We will be back next year. Jalen's going to get that MVP. We're going to get our trophy, and I'll see you on Broad Street.
Okay.
There you
Okay.
go.
We should have asked him about how he felt about the Eagles color flying in New York City.
I'm sure you love that.
Yeah.
Did you see that? They had,
Oh, I didn't see that.
the Empire State Building had the Eagles colors when they clinched the NFC title. So a lot of people
Wow.
in New York were salty about that.
No, I would be. I don't want to see the Giants colors anywhere. Are you kidding me? Like,
yeah.
that's crazy.
But they also
Wow.
had the Chiefs colors, so I guess they were planning on showing both winners. But people were
see.
happy with that.
I mean, even you saw Dak Prescott came out. He got booed at the Super Bowl because
Oh, yeah,
we don't play that.
Those
you
Philly
know? It's
fans.
like,
No Cowboys around here.
he won the Man of the Year award too, and still got booed. Like,
For his charitable work, right? That's cold.
Wow. Well, Kwasi,
yeah, thank you guys so much.
appreciate you coming through. It was a great talk, great hearing from you, hearing what you're doing, and I think it's very important work. So we definitely appreciate you taking the time out.
Jay, where can people find us?
They can find us on YouTube at Nuance Show, Instagram Nuance Show. Of course, anywhere you get your podcasts, you can get the shows automatically pushed to your device. And yeah, that's where you can get us.
And of course, we're live on Facebook every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday, 7. Yeah.
Excellent, guys. It's a pleasure.
Yes, thank you, Kwasi. Thank you, Jay. Thank you for everyone for checking us out. As always, we've got work to do. Catch you next time.